rolled a natural one on his charisma check at birth. That's what happened. But speaking of ineptitude, nefariousness, let's now move on to the Republican presidential debate. Ah, yes. Republicans duking it out for second place. You hate to see it, or you love to see it. I don't know. You might be like me. You love to see it because I am a loser. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. If we can't make fun of yourself, we can make fun of. But seriously, though, let's get into it. So the first Republican presidential debate was held last night in Milwaukee. The Fox News event was moderated by Brett Baier and Martha McCallum. Although moderated may be too strong of a word. It was held before a live, loud, and unruly studio audience. The candidates fought amongst themselves, shouting at the audience and talking over each other while exchanging insults and ignoring the moderators. The Arizona Republic summed up the evening reporting thusly, quote, "There were some surprises, namely that Haley and former Vice President Mike Pence, of all people, made strong showings. Everyone ganged up on Vivek Ramaswamy, which isn't surprising given that he started things off by saying he was the only candidate on stage not bought and paid for, taking the sweet page out of Trump. But the biggest shock was how little of an impact Ron DeSantis made. Going in, conventional wisdom said that other candidates would attack him, but mostly they ignored him, and often so did the moderators. Every time he answered, there was a moment of, oh, yeah, him. Then again, when he did answer, he didn't, at least not what was asked anyways. That's not the question, McCollum said at one point after he wandered off topic. I know he said, but here's the thing. Mostly it went like this. Moderator, Mr. DeSantis, what color is your tie? DeSantis, 7. Stunningly, the word woke was never uttered, not even by DeSantis, though he did manage to work in a George Soros mention. Christie probably had the line of the night saying Ramaswamy,
I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here.
There are 9 candidates who qualified to be on the debate stage. Miami Mayor Francis Suarez, former Representative Will Hurd of Texas, businessman Perry Johnson, and radio host Larry Elder did not qualify for the debate. 8 showed up last night. Here's where the 9 stood before the debate. So Trump is the purple line. DeSantis is, or the blue line, I should say. DeSantis is this reddish purple line. Look at that, just cratering. Wow. Just cratering, dude. So we can see them all right here. So we hover Trump's at 50, 50, 51, 54, 53, 52, 54. He's solidly in the lead according to 538's average polls. And DeSantis is at 23, 21, 21. Oh, look, cratering. What happened in July? A lot happened in July. Going down, Ramaswamy's going up. DeSantis is going down. Looks like Ramaswamy is taking all of DeSantis's points, bruh. Let's continue on, though. As always, in the case of large lineup political debates, the TV event was short on policy and long on ideology, bluster, and sound bites. The format of 60 seconds to answer a question, 30 seconds for a follow-up, allowed for little substance. This has been an issue for debates for a long time, especially with a crowded field. So maybe what should happen is more political forums. Maybe they should split the debates up for four for all. Maybe they should do 2v2s, some intelligence squared, Oxford style debates. These things wouldn't be entertaining, but they would be much more informative of a political position. Who watches debates for political positions and understanding how the events are of the world? They watch debates for the beatdown, my friends, because it's entertaining.
Are you not entertained?
So this is a problem that needs to be fixed eventually. Now, there were the expected lies and misinformation on topics like abortion. Everyone agreed with DeSantis. The Democrats want to legalize abortion up to and including the month of birth, which is, of course, a lie. And the reason this is a lie is because they take a relatively fringe position in the Democratic Party or among lefties and apply it to all Democrats when Democrats are pretty much middle of the road on this issue. They want Roe to be the law of the land, and that's pretty much it. Like, with exceptions for life of the mother, which is where some of this like legal to the point of birth things come from. Because yeah, if a fetus dies while in the womb and it's month 8, well, an abortion is still needed because that's how you vacate the dead fetus. That's, I know, still an abortion, medically speaking. You might not want to call it that. The procedure is the same. And in the law, it's generally treated the same because that's how hospitals operate, yada, yada, yada. That's why it's a lie. Now, however, though, Haley was the common sense voice on the panel on the abortion issue, pointing out that calling for a federal ban is a losing issue for Republicans.
When you're talking about a federal ban, be honest with the American people. We haven't had 45 pro-life senators in over 100 years, so no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president could ban all those state laws. Don't make women feel like they have to decide on this issue when you know we don't have 60 Senate votes in the House.
She is correct. All the previous elections since Roe was overturned have turned significantly, have turned so on the abortion issue. Trump, who Brer referred to as the elephant not in the room, took up very little oxygen because he wasn't there. And honestly, though, it's probably because the candidates on stage were a bit cowardly and didn't want to like do the rough and tumble with him. One, when he's not there, sometimes people think that's rude. You don't bid up on a guy that can't defend himself. But also because the base is still wedded to Trump. Now, all present said it was time for the party to look forward, not backward. They also all said the same thing about the insurrection, by the way. In reference to Trump, Nikki Haley said, quote, "We have to face the fact that Trump is the most disliked politician in America. We can't win a general election that way." But when asked for a show of hands who would support Trump if he became the Republican nominee, even if Trump became a convicted felon, Haley still raised her hand and said that she would support him.
You all signed a pledge to support the eventual Republican nominee. If former President Trump is convicted in a court of law, would you still support him as your party's choice? Please raise your hand if you would.
Vivek Ramaswamy, who spent much of the debate praising Trump, also immediately raised his hand, with Tim Scott and Doug Burgum joining him. Before raising his hand, Ron DeSantis glanced to the left and right down the stage, then his hand went up. Oof. Even Mike Pence agreed to back his old boss as the audience cheered. Only Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson refused. Throughout the debate, the audience responded to any criticism of Trump with loud and sustained boos.
This is the great thing about this country. Booing is allowed, but it doesn't change the truth. It doesn't change the truth.
The most unhinged award for the debate goes to Vivek Ramaswamy, who called for the dismantling of the administrative state. Here's what he said about the Department of Education, for instance.
So look, we have a crisis of achievement. Let's shut down the head of the snake, the Department of Education. Take that $80 billion, put it in the hands of parents across this country. This is the civil rights issue of our time. Allow any parent to choose where they send their kids to school. End the teachers' unions at the local level to allow public schools to compete. And then revive our national identity where every high school senior should have to pass the same civics test that, frankly, every immigrant, including my mother, had to pass in order to become a citizen of this country. And the fact of the matter is, look, there's...
Okay. So a couple of things here, okay? One, no on the dismantling of the Department of Education. But the reason I say no on dismantling the Department of Education is because, unlike what Republicans want to tell you about what the Department of Education does, it doesn't set overall educational policy for the United States. Educational policy is still set largely by state and local governments, depending on the state. Sometimes it's the state setting it for the localities, and the localities can tinker around the margins. Other localities, depending on the state, including Texas, by the way, have more control than would otherwise stated. A lot of the things that are happening with some of the stuff, the federalization of the education system, came in from things like No Child Left Behind, which were designed in order to try to monitor and improve educational standards to get our students to pass tests and things like that in a more concrete manner, more consistent manner, I should say. And so what the Department of Education really does is that it is a research and data house for education matters. And it provides funding for schools to do some things like pre-K, so Head Start provides funding for that. It provides funding for certain things, like if we want to have PE in the United States, well, it will fund PE courses for people, for districts. It will give them money for that specific purpose. So it has some pulled strings with the power of the purse strings, of course, and things like Title IX and things like that with education, but it doesn't set overall policy. It collects data and looks for best practices and tries to encourage those best practices through some funding, but mostly just providing data to states, and the states do what they will with it, largely speaking. So that's why you don't get rid of the Department of Education, because you want to know what the best practices are, and you want to give states and localities the ability to understand where those practices lead. So you will have to have a system for that, and the federal government serves that purpose. Serves that purpose in a lot of ways. The Department of Energy does a similar thing. Department of Agriculture does that as well. Weather Service was a United States thing. All this stuff, right? It's a lot of data-driven stuff. So no on that. All right. Now, even if you were to dismantle the Department of Education and give all that money back to every single citizen in the United States or every single resident in the United States to send their kid where they would want, if you didn't regulate how schools were operated, and if you didn't implement some sort of price control, then what you would do is just lead to basically welfare for the rich. All the best schools would be overrun by the people that could afford it. You would have a competition with it for that. And you would just have poorer outcomes for everyone but those that have the time and resources to get their kids to the best school possible. If you like social Darwinism and you don't give a fuck about other things, sure, that's what you're gonna like. But that's not what we should do. And finally, part of the reason why they want to have this whole Department of Education thing gotten rid of is because and the unions specifically, it's because the unions back Democrats, because teachers are, generally speaking, lean more liberal than they do conservative, generally speaking. This doesn't mean that the conservative teachers don't exist. It just means that on a whole, it's more of a liberal-like profession. And that makes sense given that teachers get paid so little, especially in states like Oklahoma, but also because they don't like the fact that the federal government, that state governments are constrained in what they can and can't do on a school campus due to the First Amendment. Straight up. A lot of conservatives and Republicans want there to be religion in school, and they want the state to fund that. But the state can't fund it, not directly, because of the First Amendment, of the anti-establishment clause. So they want to get rid of that, because a lot of conservatives and Republicans are very wedded to the idea that religion creates a moral foundation from which the country can benefit from. And of course, they only mean, or generally speaking, only mean some sort of Christian, Judeo-Christian set of belief system, which is conservative Christianity and conservative Judaism. So that's where they're at with it. Now, I will give one thing to Ramaswamy here. I actually think that the high schools should have to have a civics test. I think that he's actually right. I think that would actually help the country immensely if we had proper civics education within the country, but you're not going to get that without some sort of buy-in from every single governor across the country. Common Core practices was agreed to by governors across the country, or some sort of federal oversight coming down and dictating a certain kind of education being taught to people. Now, they want it to be this kind of rosy picture of America where America did no wrong, or any wrong that America did was just a little bit more right than the rest of the world, so it wasn't all bad, right? That's the kind of stuff they want. I don't agree with that, but I think that the civics test that immigrants do have to take in order to become citizens is a good baseline to understand where American history is. and what kind of country America was designed to be and the kind of things that happen. I'm just about to get to that, Nikki. Nikki said he also wants to raise the age to 25, voting age to 25, and only if they pass the civics test. That is true. That is a thing that I am also against, because just because you are uneducated, just because you are ignorant, just because you might be stupid, doesn't mean your voice shouldn't matter in a democracy. And raising the voting age to 25, part of the reason they want to do that is because of fucking science and the brain development not stopping until 25, yada yada yada, but also because they don't want kids that are generally more liberal and lefty and freaking out there spacey when it comes to like ideas to fix the country to have an influence on the country. So that's why they want to raise it to 25. Never mind the fact that generally speaking, people under the age of 25 don't vote. Even Gen Z, there was only a 30% turnout. That was way higher than it was for us millennials. But, most people didn't vote, right? Most people don't start voting until they have some sort of stake in the system. And typically speaking, that doesn't happen for most people until around the age, between the ages of 24 and 32. Is when people start to become civically engaged, because that's when they start working, that's when they start family formation, that's when they start to own property. Millennials being an exception, of course, and that's becoming rarer about the owning of property here. But that's when people, generally speaking, start to tune in to it. It could be because of the brain development. That could be part of it. Shifting from short-term thinking to long-term thinking, but that's what it is. But let's get back over to Vivek. See what the rest of this little clip says.
Part of education policy that also rests with the family. I didn't grow up in money, but the word privilege gets used.
That's a lie. He grew up with money. He might have not been super rich, but he was upper middle class at the very least. Actually, I think he was rich. Yeah, his dad was a engineer for General Electric. So that's just a downright lie. He's relying on, I was an immigrant that came with only $20 in my pocket, and look where I'm at. America. Yeah, fuck yeah. I had less money than this fucker did. Okay.
A lot. Well, you know what? I did have the ultimate privilege of two parents in the house with a focus on educational achievement. And I want every kid to
culture war. Woo!
enjoy that. So part of the problem is we also have a federal government that pays single women more not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house, contributing to an epidemic of fatherlessness. And I think...
Okay, some of y'all are going to hate me for this. He's not entirely wrong there. The way welfare is done in this country is shit. It's not because single women tend to get more money because they're single. It's because, and they have kids, it's because able-bodied adults are expected to work. Women are expected to be at home with the kids. So when welfare was first designed, it was designed in that kind of sexist way. It's not as big of a problem now as it used to be, but it still is a problem. And the reason that that is the case is because a woman without income that has a man in the house with income is not going to qualify for those benefits. And so if it's better for the man to live outside of the house and provide money to the mother, and the mother raise the kids on her quote-unquote own as far as federal government is concerned, then they can get welfare. That is a perverse incentive that should be done away with. They want the welfare to be done away with entirely. That's fucking stupid. That's going to cause more problems than it's worth. We've already seen that with welfare to work programs that they are harping on and that Clinton helped pass ever since Reagan. Like every welfare since Reagan has been shit. It was maybe a little overly generous, maybe not enough oversight in the 70s on welfare when it first was created. But since Reagan, it's just been whittled away and whittled away and whittled away to the point of like, it's not going to everybody that qualifies for it. It's not being administered correctly. It's done on the state level, so state can take welfare money with block grants and spend them on all kinds of stuff that don't make sense because there's not oversight on it, etc. Like all this stuff is just bad. It's bad how it's done. So he's a little bit right about that, okay? But their solutions for it are shit. They're even worse than the system we have now. Remember that.
That goes hand in glove with the education crisis as well, because we have to remember education starts with the family, and the nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind.
Continuing on though, Ramaswamy also came forward as a 9/11 truther this week, as he insisted in a CNN interview that it was an inside job, pointing to the presence of FBI agents on the planes as proof.
Saying that you were misquoted here. So we will take you at your word.
Yes.
You're saying that you were misquoted here, but you were asked another time recently about whether or not 9/11 was an inside job, this is what your response was.
9/11 inside job, or exactly how the government tells us?
I don't believe the government has told us the truth. Again, I'm driven by evidence and data. What I've seen in the last several years is we have to be skeptical of what the government does tell us. I haven't seen evidence to the contrary, but do I believe everything the government told us about it? Absolutely not.
That's two
believe
questions.
the 9/11 Commission? Absolutely not.
I mean, Vic, I think people look at those comments. They look at what you said in The Atlantic, which you say you were misquoted. They look at comments that you've made about the Federal Reserve adding zeros to media companies' bank accounts. And I mean, it looks like you're floating conspiracy theories with this defense of, I'm just asking questions.
We're just a conspiracy-brained country, aren't we? That's what it is, right? Jesus Christ. In other news, in other debate-related stuff, the debate prep offered to DeSantis by his PAC in that leaked information we reported on last week didn't appear to help him whatsoever. The end of his closing remark illustrates how he tried to follow the part of the advice to look like a regular human being, and it just didn't work. Look at this cringe. This cringe. It's so beautiful. Oh, I'm so glad that he is such a uncharismatic, non-real person that's been running for president his whole life that it just backfired so tremendously. Look at this.
And I will not let you down. And I will not let you
Look at
down.
Oh, wait. Think, DeSantis. Think. What were you supposed to do? Oh, you were supposed to smile. You were supposed to smile, DeSantis. Smile. Look like a human, not a robot. And you failed. Miserably. Miserably. Ah. It's so beautiful. Oh, man. Just imagine. Imagine if somebody with his ability actually had the charisma of a Trump. How fucked we would be. But thank God, he has been running for president his whole life and has the charisma of a fucking ant, I guess. I don't know. What has really low charisma? He rolled a natural one on his charisma check at birth. That's what happened. My God. My God, it's beautiful. It's so good. It's so good. We are so lucky. You have no idea. But despite all that, everybody, despite that, for those that might have won the debate, here is how political polls sees it. So we have Ramaswamy at 28%, DeSantis at 17%, Pence at 13%, Haley at 7%, Christie at 4%, Burgum at 3%, and Hutchinson at 2%. My God, despite how badly he did during the debate, despite of how a non-human he is, 27% in this best debate performance poll still shows that he has a chance. But he doesn't, because he chose to go after Trump. And if you go for the king, you gotta go for the headshot. And he's just not doing it because he's cowardly. And finally, here is where the lineup stood in post-debate poll of 450 likely voters with a look at their numbers have trended. According to this, we have a poll of 450 likely Republican voters is that Trump is at 51%. 1% lower than he was in July. Ramaswamy at 13%, which is 5% higher. DeSantis at 9%, which is 4% lower. Again, Ramaswamy is looking like he's eating DeSantis' lunch, but it's still early in the contest. Oh, it's not anyone's game, but it's anyone's game for second place. Pence is at 5%, Scott at 4%, Tim Scott at 4%, Chris Christie at 4%, Nikki Haley at 3%, Larry Elder at 1%, Burgum, I don't remember his first name, at 1%, and Hutchinson 1% as well. Head to head, we see Trump at 72% and DeSantis at 28%. So that's what we have going forward. That's where the Republican Party is as of right now. There isn't any indication that the Republican Party is going to wrestle itself away from the control of Donald Trump. So you can likely expect, unless a trial happens very quickly and he's actually found guilty, for him to be the next nominee for the Republican presidency. Again, for Republicans again. Now, the next Republican debate is scheduled for September 27th. And let me look at what day that is. And I'm going to put that on my calendar. So that's also on a Wednesday, They're doing Wednesday debates. Interesting. So we might do a live show of that.